Where did it all start? Ancient times. There is another level to this story of Jesus that goes back to the time of a man named Abraham. He was the forefather of the Jewish race. Abraham had been promised by God that in his seed all the nations of the earth would be blessed. With the rise of the Jewish nation, much of that promise was fulfilled. Even so, the people knew that there was more to come, and they were watching for it. Despite the fact that God longed to be the king of his people, the Jews, the Jewish people developed their own system of kings that continued for many centuries. The royal line went from bad to worse until finally it was extinguished when the people were hauled off into captivity to Babylon, which is Iraq today, some 600 years before Jesus was born. Their best king, David, who was himself an adulterer and a murderer, was given a prophecy by the prophet Nathan. "I will raise up your offspring after you, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son." Since no king had ever fulfilled that prophecy, the people waited for the one who would. Another prophet, Isaiah, had also prophesied 700 years before Jesus was born.
All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means
God with us.
Isaiah then went on to predict a solution for Israel's greatest need: divine forgiveness for personal and national wrongdoing. It was to be accomplished in a very unusual way. The forgiveness would come through a servant whom God would send. He would look just like an ordinary man of the time. But instead of welcoming God's servant, Israel would despise and reject this man. They would allow him to go like a lamb to the slaughter. This servant of God would be pierced for our rebellion, crushed for our sins, beaten and whipped so that we could be healed and made whole. No one had ever fulfilled the prophecy of the virgin birth or this prophecy of that wonderful child becoming a sin-bearing servant of God, and so the people waited for him to come. The ancient prophets knew that the one to come would be born in Bethlehem because the prophet Micah had predicted it. This new ruler for Israel was also predicted to achieve a new basis for the relationship between God and man. The prophet Jeremiah wrote about it. "The new covenant that I will make with the people of Israel will be this: I will put my law within them and write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. I will forgive their sins, and I will no longer remember their wrongs. I, the Lord, have spoken." No one had ever fulfilled these prophecies, and so they waited for the one who would. It would seem then that the story of Jesus begins not in the stable in Bethlehem, but centuries before, in the very purposes of God.